You have a PhD in leadership. You work for and with important organizations during your whole life, and you teach leadership, actually. How do you define leadership? And basically, is leadership different nowadays than it used to be 20 years ago?
I don't think leadership is different. I think there's been more focus on leadership because people are looking for direction. People seem lost in business, in organizations, in religious affiliations. They just are looking for leadership, meaning direction. I always use an analogy when I talk about leadership. Good leaders are very much like symphony conductors. A conductor will stand in front of an orchestra, and the conductor, the leader, can play all the instruments, but doesn't. The conductor is the one who gives direction so that the music is harmonious. So leadership is about bringing out the best in people to make sure that as a whole, that unit, that organization is moving in the same direction.
Awesome. And preparing this interview, Santiago Conde, a Rotarian, a Uruguayan Rotarian, remind me that the mission of the Rotary Club is service above self in the community, in the workplace, and throughout the world. Rotary, as all the audience know, is a worldwide organization of more than 1.2 million business, professional, and community leaders that provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards in all locations, and help build goodwill and peace in the world. Basically, this is exactly what we hope our alumni do with their lives. And one of the things we talk a lot with our students and faculty is how our alumni can achieve this goal through their professional lives, through their professional activity. And how can they become an instrument for a better world through their jobs? What is the role of business in solving society's problem? What do you think about that?
I can't speak for business. I can speak for Rotary International. As Rotarians, those of you who are in Rotary know this, but if you are not in Rotary, we were organized with two basic principles at the forefront. One was fellowship, and the second one was vocational service. The original man who started Rotary was interested in finding people from different professions in his community in Chicago so that he could get to know them and that they could benefit from the skills and talents of different professions. So as Rotarians, one of the things that all of us do around the world is professional development for our members in our clubs. There are many people who come into our clubs young in their profession, and they see business and professional women, and they know that by being a member of that club, they can learn many things that they can use in their career. Public speaking, project management, leadership, and many others. So an organization like Rotary can help young professionals become more attuned to their own profession, as well as looking at the humanitarian aspect of what we do, the service above self part. You know, when I was young, my grandmother used to say that there are only two kinds of people in the world, those who get it and those who don't. And I think that Rotarians get the concept of serving to make the world a better place.
And you mentioned the word service. And how do you distinguish between service and charity?
We are a humanitarian organization, so the service we provide has sustainability built in. What that means is that when we do projects around the world or in our communities, we are generally doing things to help people understand how to do it once we leave. That's the difference between service and charity. Charity is giving people a handout or something, but then leaving. Service is different. As I mentioned, it has that sustainability part. We want people to understand this is how they can improve their lives, improve their world. So Rotary clubs generally will look at ways that how exactly community stronger by going in and showing people how exactly to do that.
Amazing. And you're the second woman to lead the Rotary International in the whole history of the Rotary Club worldwide. And in this VUCA world, diversity and inclusion are part of the conversation and part of the decision-making of any organization. Do you think our society is being truly and deeply diverse and inclusive, or do you think we are in a phase of diverse washing in some way?
I think we've come a long way.
Diversity washing.
Yes, I think we have come a very long way. I will speak for Rotary. Many of you know that in the late 1980s, Rotary became open to accepting women into membership. And so that was our first step in moving in the right direction. Several years ago, we elevated Rotaract, which is our 18 to 30-year-old organization, and they are now full members in Rotary. So diversity is not just about gender. It can be about so many other things. It can be about age, it could be about socioeconomic status, it can be about skin color, it can be about many, many, many things. But Rotary, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we always, I shouldn't say we, I always add the letter B for belonging. Because when we create those environments that are diverse, that are equitable, that are inclusive, what we're really doing is creating an environment in which people feel they belong. That's the whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's create atmospheres and environments where people feel, I fit here, I belong here.
And what are the main challenges to improve this diversity and inclusion in the business world, in universities, and in organizations?
One that I've encountered is certainly culture. There are places in the world where culture dictates something different than what we are suggesting. For instance, the very first time I traveled to Poland, I was introduced to the Rotary Club of Krakow, all men, and the Rotary Club of Wawel, all men. And then they said, Stephanie, we would like you to see our third Rotary Club, the Rotary Club Wanda, all females. And so in some cultures, that is the way that they have adopted the concept of diversity and inclusion. So it can be a challenge in some places simply because of culture. But I'd like to ask all of you, when you think about all of the organizations to which you belong, or when you think about your studies here at the university, was it all one gender? Is your business all one gender? Of course not. Of course not. The beauty of our world is that men and women respond to the world differently, and the world responds to men and women differently. So when we have both genders involved in all of our activities, our businesses, our associations, we have the best of both worlds.
As I mentioned in the introduction, you're also a professor and a businesswoman. And what what do you believe is the role of universities in particular, and in particular of business schools, in constructing a more peaceful world and goodwill?
Well, I think universities, because I have been in one, have a very similar mission as an organization like Rotary. We are not peace brokers. We are peace builders. What does that mean? It means that we can't stop wars. We can't negotiate the release of hostages, but what we can do is create the conditions that are necessary for a more peaceful environment. So when Rotary or religious organizations or other kinds of groups or universities look at how they serve in a community, what we're really doing is creating an environment that can promote more peace. Because some people think that the only definition of peace is no war. And there are much, much, much more layers to what peace means. Peace starts with ourselves, then in our families, and then in our communities, and then in the world. You know, very often I visit Rotary clubs, and there's bickering going on. And I wonder when I see that, if we're supposed to be a peace-building organization, how are we going to show the world that if we can't even have a peaceful Rotary meeting? So we really need to focus on peace starting with ourselves. And then it expands to our families. Domestic violence is another example of something that is not peaceful. Bullying in schools is an example of something that is not peaceful. So there are so many ways that we can work to create peaceful environments, and it begins with education. Education is the bottom line for everything. If people do not know, if people do not understand the behavior that is necessary to create a peaceful environment, then we will never get to one. So we always must start with education.
And I will make my last two questions, and I will open for Q&A of the audience. How do you define success? And do you think you're a successful person?
Well, I guess it would depend on who you ask.
I'm asking you, how do you define success?
Success is really having a vision and then helping people move to that vision. And if you've been able to do that, then you are successful. Many people who are reading information about our Rotary year 24-25 know that I am very focused on growing our organization. So at the end of the year, we want to look at various parts of the world and see if it happened. If it has happened, then I know that along with my governors and my club presidents, that we have done what we set out to do in 24-25. So that is success, setting a vision and making sure that you reach that goal. And
what advice do you have for young people, and especially for women who aspire to be leaders? I mean, a last recommendation or advice?
Well, one would be to adopt the mantra that I have had, and that is that life is always more interesting on the other side of a yes. Say yes. If it's legal and moral, say yes. And then figure it out. Many times, women are afraid of saying yes. Do I have enough time? Can I do this? Is my ability all right? Do I have enough money? Just say yes and figure it out. Because when you say yes, life presents so many amazing opportunities, and you become stronger. And frankly, the world needs strong women and strong men to do the work that we need to do. So the best advice I would have is to say yes.
So I don't know if the audience have any questions. Bettina is over there with the microphone if someone wants to propose a question.
Thank you. In your opinion, what topics do you think is necessary to add or modify at the United Nations Agenda of 2030?
The United Nations has a list of goals that they want to reach, and Rotary, as an organization, has a group of people, there are about 30 of them, called the Rotary Representative Network. And they are our representatives to the United Nations and to various UN agencies. So that would really be a question for that level, because I don't attend the United Nations. But I can tell you from the 30,000 viewpoint that we have, we have 7 areas of focus in Rotary, and all of them address something of the UN goals. So, we move forward and we pay attention to what's happening. Those of you in Rotary know that it was just several years ago that we added our 7th area of focus, which is the environment. So as we learn more and more and go through more and more with our representatives and world governments and Rotary leaders, there may be an 8th area of focus that will serve us. But our areas of focus are broad enough that right now they fit into, all the goals of the United Nations fit into one of our areas.
Hi, I have a question about one of the last things you said. There was just say yes and you'll figure it out. And I was thinking precisely how to cultivate an entrepreneurial spirit, because sometimes we have like this idea that we need a certain type of knowledge or that we have to be experts at something to start. So my question is how to start at the beginning when you don't know much about a certain topic and want to start.
That's the difference between being brave and being courageous. Okay? Bravery is when you see what's at the end and you make a decision about if you want to do that. So your friend says to you, I dare you to go down the hill on your bicycle. It's a really steep hill. And you can see the end of the hill, and you make the decision whether you want to try that or not. Courage is taking a leap without knowing what's at the bottom. Courage is taking a step without having any understanding of what may be there, but you still take the step. And so that's what we want to instill and inspire in people. And so when I talk about saying yes, sometimes it means you don't know what's on the other side. I said yes to many things in Rotary without knowing, what would be on the other side, but I simply figured it out sometimes. It will get you in trouble, however, sometimes, because I remember the first time, Isabelle, I went to India. I was going for a national immunization day to give polio drops to young children. And so the day before I left, I called my mother and I said, hey Mom, I'm going to India tomorrow. And she went crazy. Why didn't you tell me before? I said, listen, I've known for 6 months, but if I told you 6 months ago, you would have worried for 6 months. Now you're only going to worry for 12 days and then I'm going to be back. So sometimes you just have to evaluate the risks of taking that step, but For instance, I had a wonderful career in education. I worked in universities in the United States, in Pennsylvania. But near the end of my career, I had always wanted to own my own business. And so I took the courageous step. I left the university, which was very comfortable, and I started my own business, which is where I did my consulting and my training. And yes, the first year was uncertain, and my income was uncertain. But as I went further and further and longer, I ended up making more money than I ever made at the university. So it depends on self-motivation. You know, when you work for someone, when you have a boss, that boss will tell you, will evaluate your performance, will expect you to do things. When you work for yourself, you set the expectations. So if you want to work really hard, you can do that. If you don't want to work so hard, you can also do that. So self-motivation is the key to being a great entrepreneur.
So we have time for a last question.
Hello, good morning. My name is Michelle Carrer, and I'm part of the Buried Center, that is a center that works on service learning at this university. And I was wondering, from your experience working in education, what would be your recommendations for doing effective service learning at a university, and what things you think that we should be cautious not to do?
Well, I think an obvious route would be to partner with your local Rotary clubs. There's an opportunity right there for you to find out what kind of service is being provided in this community and how can students become involved in that. I think that would be, you know, an excellent way to take a step into service learning. I'm not sure I have an answer for the second one, what not to do, because I'm such an optimist that I would find the positive in any situation. So that one's a very hard question for me to answer, the second one.
And I think we have time for the last question that was over there.
Hi. My question is, how do you manage your time to fulfill like everything, be like your personal life, your family, and being the president of such a huge organization as Rotary?
It's about figuring out what your priorities are, because the truth is, we cannot have it all. You cannot do it all. For instance, when I was the district governor in Rotary, that's a leadership position in an area, I was working full-time. I was working on my PhD. My mother was ill, and I was her caretaker. So I had to decide what were the things that were going to have to go to the side for a while. And I tell people frequently, if the Board of Health would have come to my house, they would have shut me down because I didn't house clean, because it wasn't important. So everything was dusty when I was done. So it's really about figuring out what your priorities are. In Rotary, we have a scheme that is important to be followed, and the scheme is family, work, Rotary, in that order. You get in trouble if you try to change that order. So it's very important to keep family first and faith, and then work, and then Rotary. So figure out your priorities, and then it can happen. One of the things I miss, because I am in this job right now, I have a bicycle, not a 10-speed, but just a bicycle. I used to love to go and take a ride in my neighborhood. I can't do that anymore, so I miss that. I also miss cooking. I'm going to forget how, because everywhere I go, people are making dinners for me. So just figure out what your priorities are, and that will be the answer to how you manage your time, because we all have the same 24 hours.
So Stephanie, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for
You're very welcome.
spending this morning with us.